So yesterday I uploaded the top 10 best strikers in the UFC currently, and it only made sense to upload the top 10 best wrestlers now. Keep in mind, I'm not talking about grapplers, but I'm talking about wrestlers. If this was grappling, Charles Oliveira would be number 1. But I feel like wrestling kind of overpowers grappling, as we've seen in many fights, for example, like the Islam vs. Oliveira fight, and the Arman vs. Oliveira fight. We've seen that wrestling beats grappling most of the time. So in this video, we're doing the top 10 best wrestlers in the UFC. But before we get into the top 10, I want to start with some honorable mentions. Arman Tsarukyan, Colby Covington, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Alexandre Pantoja, Umar Nurmagomedov, Henry Cejudo, Magomed Ankalaev, and Curtis Blades. Before we get into the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you guys think. Also, make sure you guys join the Discord server, link in description. By the way, before we start with the list, I don't care what these people did outside of the UFC, I only care about what they did inside the UFC. They could be Olympic gold medalists and I don't care. I just want to let you guys know beforehand. But anyways, let's get into it. We're starting it off with number 10 with Movsar Evloev. I feel like Movsar Evloev is an underrated wrestler. I feel like whenever I hear people talking about their best wrestlers in the UFC, not much people talk about Movsar Evloev. Movsar out-wrestled Diego Lopez, who's a great grappler. He landed 4 for 7 takedowns on Lopez. Movsar applies good pressure. He out-wrestled Arnold Allen. Movsar has good cage work. He landed 5 takedowns on Arnold Allen. He out-wrestled Dan Ige. And he landed 9 takedowns on Ige. I just feel like I had to show some respect to Movsar Evloev because no one does, and I feel like he deserves to be inside the top 10. I think Movsar Evloev is probably one of the best wrestlers in the featherweight division, and there's no denying he's a top 10 wrestler in the UFC. So number 10 is Movsar Evloev. We're moving on to number 9, and he was actually higher on my list, but I put him down. It's Mateusz Gamrot. Gamrot is a really good wrestler. He out-wrestled Arman Tsarukyan, who I think is a good wrestler too. He landed 6 takedowns on Arman to Arman's 1. He had 5 takedowns on Dan Hooker. Gamrot has great scrambles. Gamrot took down Rafael dos Anjos 11 times. And RDA is a great grappler. Gamrot's consistent on his takedowns, and I think he sits good at number 9. His last performance against Hooker did surprise me. I did choose Gamrot. We all know what happened, but he did show some great wrestling in that fight. I think Gamrot is actually really good. I feel like he loses to people who he shouldn't lose to. I do think he got robbed, but still, they gave it to Dan Hooker, and I think he should have had a better performance overall. I think Gamrot's one of the best wrestlers in the lightweight division, and I think he out-wrestles a lot of people in that division. Trust me when I say it, Gamrot will be back. So Mateusz Gamrot will be my number 9. We're heading on to number 8. This might surprise some of you, or it might not, but I think the reasoning will tell you why. Number 8 is Jon Jones. Jon Jones is a great wrestler. In the light heavyweight division, he showed us how good his wrestling was, but this is a current list. He did great against Cyril Gane, but Cyril Gane is terrible at wrestling and his takedown defense is horrendous. Cyril Gane made Francis Ngannou look like the best wrestler of all time. I feel like Jones' game plan is to wrestle. I feel like if he can't get you down, like the first Gustafsson fight or the Dominic Reyes fight, then it just becomes a hard match for him because his striking isn't all that. To be honest, I can't say much about Jones because he isn't active and this list is current. But who knows, I'm pretty sure he fights Stipe on the 16th of November, correct me if I'm wrong. And if he does fight Stipe, we'll see how good his wrestling is now. But that too, Stipe Miocic is in his 40s, so I can't say much about Jon Jones, so that's why I put Jon Jones a bit low at number 8. Next up, we got number 7, and I have Kamaru Usman. Usman's wrestling is always his game plan. He got out-wrestled by Chimaev, who he took 9 days short notice, but other than that, he out-wrestled all of his opponents. And before he gets a title shot, he might have to fight someone like a JDM. And if that happens, Usman's going to look like a demon. It's going to be super one-sided for Usman. Like, Kamaru Usman is still very elite, and his wrestling is just monstrous. I feel like people are just overlooking him because of his 3-fight losing streak. Like when we're looking at the second Leon Edwards fight, Usman was winning the whole fight, but Leon's fluke head kick got him. And in the third fight, Usman was a bit hesitant and couldn't get his rhythm going. So I think Usman is a good solid number 7. He's beaten other good wrestlers such as Tyron Woodley, Colby Covington, and he's beaten good strikers such as Sean Strickland. We saw in that fight, Sean Strickland couldn't do anything because he was getting wrestled the whole entire time by Usman. And to people who can mix it up like Gilbert Burns. Alright, so we're moving on to number 6. And this guy's a bit slept on now. But it's the Funk Master, Aljamain Sterling. Aljo has really good wrestling. He took down TJ Dillashaw multiple times. He out-wrestled Henry Cejudo, who has very good defensive wrestling. He went up a weight class against Calvin Kattar and out-wrestled him. And Calvin Kattar has good takedown defense. This man literally powerbombed Kattar. Aljo is an elite wrestler, and we all know that. In the second fight with Petr Yan, he out-wrestled him, and Yan has good defensive wrestling, and he outclassed him. I think Aljo beats a lot of guys in the featherweight division, and out-wrestles most of them. We saw what he did to Corey Sandhagen, and Corey Sandhagen's very good on the ground. He wrestled him, then submitted him. Aljo is really like that. I mean, a lot of people just don't like him, but y'all must have forgot about Aljo's wrestling. Because Aljo's him. We're heading on to the top 5. And with number 5, I gotta go with the one and only Merab Dvalishvili. Merab has the best cardio in the bantamweight division, and probably in the whole UFC. He has a really good gas tank, and he has an extreme pace, but he's not very efficient. He gets his opponents down because he outworks and out-wrestles them. But what I mean by he's not too efficient is when he fought Jose Aldo. Aldo defended every single takedown, but he still lost because of how much Merab was outworking him in the clinch because of his pace. Merab out-wrestled Cejudo, and he did it in better fashion than his fight against Aldo. Merab literally picked up Cejudo, walked him through the whole octagon, and then slammed him. No one does that to Henry Cejudo. Cejudo is an extremely good wrestler, as we all know. Merab absolutely destroyed Petr Yan so bad. And Yan has good wrestling and good defensive wrestling, where he showed in the first fight against Aljo. So there's just no list without Merab being in your top 10. And me personally, I think he beats Sean O'Malley in their fight coming up. And I made a video on that, so go check it out. Link in description. So number 5 is Merab Dvalishvili. Now, we're moving on to number 4, and I already know this is going to surprise a lot of you guys. But before you comment, just listen to what I have to say. For me, number 4 is Islam Makhachev. I think Islam Makhachev is an elite, great wrestler, but I think he's a better grappler. I feel like Islam usually gets submissions whenever he fights, and submission is grappling. He hasn't been as efficient lately. He went 4-13 against Poirier, but he out-wrestled Oliveira, Poirier, and easily out-wrestled Hooker, same with Bobby Green. He did well against Volkanovski in the first fight, and I just think he's so well-rounded that he can strike and grapple. He gets more submissions than decisions, and I think he's extremely good grappler. Islam Makhachev is still a great wrestler and also a great grappler. There's nothing I'm taking away from him. But I don't blame you guys because this is kind of like a hot take. A very, very, very hot take. But yeah, I got Islam Makhachev as my number 4 best wrestler in the UFC currently. So for my number 3, you guys are going to be commenting, how is this guy in your number 3 over Islam Makhachev? Let me explain to you. And number 3, I have Jailton Almeida. Almeida always follows his game plan, which is going straight to the wrestling and out-wrestling his opponent. He doesn't waste time at all. For an example, Islam will strike with you. Same with Bilal, Usman, and other fighters. But Almeida goes straight to work. He out-wrestled Alexander Romanov. He out-wrestled Derek Lewis, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Shamil Abdurakhimov, Anton Turkalj. And don't forget what he did to Curtis Blades, who's supposedly the best wrestler in the heavyweight division. He took down Blades 9 times in one round. 9 times in one round. If Almeida got his head out of the way from Curtis Blades' elbows, he would have won that fight. Jailton Almeida out-wrestled anyone he's fought. I think he beats Blades in a rematch. In a hot take coming, I think he beats Tom Aspinall. Another hot take, I think he becomes the heavyweight champion. I really do. I have high hopes on Jailton Almeida. I think he's very talented, very skilled, and I think he's the number 3rd best wrestler in the UFC. Stop sleeping on Jailton Almeida. Okay, so now we're at number 2, almost at number 1. I have Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev is very aggressive, and he imposes his will on whoever he fights. No one has defended his takedown other than Ikram Aliskerov, which was outside of the UFC. He 10-8'd Usman in the first round by out-wrestling him, and Khamzat has very, very good offensive wrestling. He's more efficient than wrestlers like Merab and Almeida. Only problem with Khamzat is his cardio. He tends to fatigue in his fights, but whenever he showcases his wrestling, he dog-walks his opponents. We saw what he did to Kevin Holland and Li Jingliang. I think he'll do the same to Whitaker. Khamzat Chimaev is a future champion in the middleweight division. It's just whenever he'll fight. That's the only question we have for Khamzat. If he stays healthy and builds more cardio up, he for sure will be a next champion, and I think he beats Dricus du Plessis. Khamzat Chimaev is the 2nd best wrestler, and argue with the wall, because you're not going to change my mind whatsoever. Alright, we're down to the last person on the list. It's number 1, the best wrestler in the whole UFC. It's Belal, remember the name, Muhammad. Belal is a very efficient wrestler. He 30-25'd Wonderboy, and we saw Shavkat take a long time to out-wrestle him. And when Belal fought him, he wrestled him very easily. Great wrestlers like Tyron Woodley had problems with Wonderboy, but Belal imposes his will against anyone he goes against. Same with Luque. Leon Edwards went against great wrestlers like Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington, and he defended well and did good. But when it came to Belal, he was getting pressured and wasn't able to defend because of how good Belal is when it comes to the wrestling aspect of MMA. Belal went 9 for 13 takedowns against Leon. Usman went 5 for 12. Belal controls almost all his opponents when they fight and has relentless cardio and pace, which helps him. I know a bunch of you guys are going to disagree with me choosing Belal as the best wrestler in the UFC, but argue with the wall, I don't care. My mind is not going to change. Belal, remember the name Muhammad, is the best wrestler in the UFC currently, and I stand with that. I appreciate y'all for watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you guys think. The Discord server will be in the link in the description, so as the other videos I said, and Spaz out.